there's not going to be another Michael Jordan. And I think when LeBron looks back on why he will never be regarded as Michael Jordan, last night was actually a really, really telling episode or two as to why. Jordan's ability to stay out of the political fray, that the social jujitsu, as it's been said to me, where you feel like you're in the realm there, and he's like, look, I wasn't into politics. And Jordan can hit us with I was just into being a basketball player, but he also played golf all the time. He liked to gamble all the time. He did have other business interests. He did have a family. Like this idea that he was not all he did was basketball. Jordan was a competitive junkie looking for the next fix. Ping pong, golf, cards, whatever. So this idea that the reason that Jordan didn't get into politics was he didn't have the bandwidth for it. No, he might not have had the appetite for it. But part of it was also the time, okay? In the 80s and 90s, even when he was trying to be pulled in the political fray, it wasn't, one, as divisive, and two, we didn't act the same about athletes. Like somehow they had to be. They had to be social justice warriors. Right? Now, remember now, if you don't get into the political fray, somehow you're not down with the cause. I understand that when you're black and it's the South and it's your home area, an area he now owns an NBA team, I fully understand that there's a different level of commitment that's desired from successful African-American men. I got it. But the fact was that Jordan was able to stay above it, and I don't know if he would have then. I don't think he would have been able to be as involved in gambling as he is now as he was then. And if you're LeBron James, you look back, you're like, what do I have to do? Well, obviously he lost some NBA finals, but there's more than that, right? Leaving Cleveland. Jordan never left Chicago, and while he was under a long-term contract, the fact is that if a guy says, I don't want to play here anymore, you can force a trade whenever you want. Jordan didn't leave. LeBron did. Came back, still wasn't right, left again. I don't think LeBron will ever get a pass on that. Even if his intentions were pure and he's been successful both leaving and returning. LeBron didn't enter the dunk contest. And the dunk contest has changed and evolved now, as opposed to back then, they were like mythical characters. And the reason that last night's was so poignant as to why there'll never be another, I would say there's threefold in the things that I saw. One, Jordan got in on Nike before Nike was Nike. And he basically built a brand by himself, as opposed to LeBron, who's continued to help Nike and build on the Nike brand. But one, his shoes are boats because he's more of a big guy. Two, it's already been done. There's already the Jordan brand. There's already Kobe shoes. And now he's kind of third. He even wears LeBron's number. Right, or has worn LeBron's number, like 23. I mean, worn Jordan's number. That's 23. Obviously, you can't go back and win NBA finals. You can't go back and get into dunk contests, and you can't get into them now. And even if you won a dunk contest, it wouldn't be the same as when Jordan did. The branding isn't the same. The commercials aren't the same. The league isn't the same. No matter how popular it is now, it's not as popular as it was back then when in the early 90s, go back and look, the NFL struggled with popularity and the NBA was king. That's not happening now. And then, last night's politics. Once you enter into politics, you can't go back. I mean, think about the Hong Kong stuff, and how LeBron chose to stay out of that discussion. He got worked by people like, wait, you have all these political aspirations. You say all these things like a politician. You want to support certain politicians. But now, when it calls into question people you do business with, now all of a sudden you want to stay out of the fray. That's not the way it works. And then, when they play in the dream team, first, because it was the dream team. Second, the thorough dominance. And third, like LeBron's whole way of trying to make everybody better and everybody happy, that wasn't Jordan's way. And that's not LeBron's fault. That's just the makeup of who they are. But there have been several times on several different Olympic teams when Kevin Durant's been the best player, not LeBron James. Carmelo Anthony has had a stretch where he was the best scorer. When it was the dream team and you had the greats of all greats in the NBA all playing, there was one unquestioned best player. That was Michael Jordan. And he chose to play and defend at a level that challenged everyone else every time he took the floor. And the specific time where we didn't go and look at somebody's personal life, we didn't care about the gambling or the drinking or anything else, for the most part, Atlantic City as more the exception than the rule. The fact is that there will never be another Michael Jordan. There just isn't. It doesn't mean that there'll be another LeBron James, but he's chasing more than ghosts. He's chasing an era which is gone. He's chasing a style of journalism which is gone. Hell, you had Ahmad Rashad who rides with him to the games. He had his own personal interviewer broadcaster. He basically started the rise of Nike. He won 6 championships and never lost in the finals. And he got a pass on a lot of things, some because he'd earned it, some because of the time. We seem to forgive and look past personal transgressions like addiction and gambling. On the other hand, we can't seem to look past anybody who has political aspirations or political feelings. That's just the way in which we're wired. Like, look, here's the easiest parallel or case study I can tell you as to how politics scare the bejesus out of most of America. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was a great player. He's arguably the greatest college player of all time. He won 6 MVPs. He won 6 NBA titles. And he scored more points than anybody in the history of the league. Kareem has never been a commentator. He's never been a guy you want to have as part of your shows. He's never been really the iconic figure and picture of what an NBA player is supposed to be, although he should be. He's an activist, author. He's highly educated. He's brilliant. But he puts people on the defensive because he's an activist. And when you challenge people politically, it becomes increasingly divisive. And when you're divisive, you're not embraced. And that's the difference with Jordan. That's the brilliance to the Republicans buy sneakers too comment. Because he's right, and he was right to stay out of the fray. And he was right to not endorse somebody that he didn't really know all that well. Doesn't mean that somebody else who is politically active is wrong. Make sure you mark that down. Like, I'm not saying if you want to use your platform to go into politics, you can. On the same note, if you don't have to. And it is easier. It is easier to embrace. You are more human. You are less divisive when you don't. I didn't make the rules. I'm just telling you what they exactly are. You have to acknowledge Jordan's universal popularity, at least in some part, is because he never picked a side politically, with the exception of Nike versus Reeboks, and that's because he was a Nike guy. Ric Bucher joins us from Bleacher Report. Rick, which side are you on? Guys today are too soft, or the old guys weren't skilled enough? Because that seems to be the two camps now.
Well, the game isn't what it was back then from a physical standpoint. I mean, when I first started covering the league, guys coming in the league had to spend a year in the weight room putting on 10, 15 pounds just to be able to survive. That was just the reality of it. So it is a different game. Today's players, from an individual standpoint, are far more skilled, maybe far more, but just across the board, greater individual skills, the shooting range, the ball handling, some of the things that we see. Now, those things go hand in hand, though, right? I mean, you don't get to do all the tricks. You don't get to play from, shoot from range if you're getting beat up the entire game. So I don't know that. I mean, I probably go to the point where the game is just, it is, what I hate the most is it's become a fool the referees game. We, as a former soccer player, that was the knock on soccer, that guys took dives and guys faked it trying to draw fouls and contact and cards, and soccer got rid of it, and basketball seems to have introduced it.
Yeah, I would say that's the Euros that's one of the things they brought to the game, right? I mean,
yep.
I think there's a lot of skill that they brought to the game, but that is something they brought to it.
That and an additional step
Yes.
in being able to move without dribbling the ball.
Yes. The travels were more blatant then. Now they're just awkward. Wait, was that a travel? Is that a Euro step? Which was it? All right, your general takeaways from last night's 2 episodes.
Just the thing that that still resonates with me is Kobe talking about that if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, he would not have 5 championships. I think we both know that Kobe for a long time, the way he handled the one-on-one answer is not, I don't know, maybe it's a growth thing for where he was when he sat in front of the camera. Maybe it was an homage to Jordan in saying, that it's not important to me. It was important to Kobe. Kobe would have loved to have played Jordan one-on-one, and he thought he would have beaten him. That's the honest answer when it comes to Kobe. But the absolute respect and humility that he showed in attributing all of his success to Jordan, I have never heard Kobe speak to that level about anybody, whether it's Jerry West, whether it's Michael Jordan. What he said on camera to me that was, whether it's the maturity of Kobe post-playing, whether it was, being part of the doc, whatever it was, that's what struck me the hardest, and that's what will stay with me the longest.
How do you think Jordan handled the gambling stuff?
I think they addressed it as much as they had to. Obviously from a PR standpoint, he did a terrible job of, and I had forgotten. I'd forgotten about the sunglasses. It was such a bad look. If you thought that Jordan was infallible when it came to PR, that and his explanation for it really wasn't well thought out. But I will say this, and I always find this a little amusing, us in the media. And I was there during the 93 finals. If you look hard enough in the doc, you'll see me in the background when he was on the Suns practice court when he wasn't talking and Charles was, or actually the first time that he spoke during those finals. But the fact that he went to Atlantic City and then he came back, whether it was at 1 when he said or it was 2:30 when it was reported, whatever it was, to me that is, and I'm not joking, that was the clearest indication for me that he doesn't have a problem. Because the gamblers that I know, the people that are addicted to gambling,
never leave. They
could not have gone and come back. If they did, it would have been they were rushing back to get back in time for the game, or they would have come back, whatever it was, they would not have come back at a reasonable hour. And trust me, going to Atlantic City and back to New York at 2:30, if you got a game at 7:30 the next day, that is a very reasonable hour based on what I know. I've seen guys, I've seen players, I've seen people, I've seen NBA players who have been at the craps table like 24 hours straight, and they clearly could not walk away. So that to me, I never thought he had I did not think he had a gambling problem, but I think they could have addressed it more deeply. They had Jordan, David Stern, and a couple of reporters who were basically just reporting on what they had heard, or, for the most part. That was it. Those are the only people that talked about it. If you really wanted to address it, you would have gone a little deeper than that.
Ric Bucher joining us from Bleacher Report and Fox Sports 1. The Dream Team thing was interesting to me. We got a little bit more Isaiah Thomas. And why won't... And I understand that Bird had beef with him, and Magic, who is supposedly his best friend, had beef with him. But why won't Jordan own it?
You don't think he did?
I think he did some. I mean, all he had to say was, I didn't want him on the team and nobody else wanted him on the team, period.
Well,
right?
I kind of felt like I felt like he did that. I mean, he did. He
just said, hey, nobody ever brought him up to me. But then there's the interview where he's walking in to do the interview and I don't want any Isaiah Thomas questions, right? Like he,
Right. No, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, at one point, like when he said, "I respect the hell out of his game," that to me was okay. But I didn't want to play with him. I mean, maybe I'm just interpreting and knowing, feeling like I knew what he was saying there. And I'm also looking at this now through the prism of this is obviously Jordan's production. So we're not going to get, the unvarnished, bare bones. It's not a documentary. We need to stop calling it a documentary because it's not. It's a production. And it's an interesting production. It's got a lot of behind the scenes production. But it's nonetheless, it's a production by Michael Jordan. And it's giving me a certain degree of insight into him. But it is, without question, it's being shaded and it's being channeled. It is Jordan according to Jordan, not according to some independent enterprise. Yeah. And that would be a true look. Ken Burns takes issue with it. That's enough said. He knows what a documentary is. So I don't fault Jordan for doing it. I don't fault ESPN for doing it. I think it's just it's a bit of false advertising if people are going to look at it as a tell-all documentary.
Yeah, there's some ESPN self-aggrandizing there, right? Like throwing in their anchors, like got it, right? There are other people who have been covering. And I actually agree with Peter. I actually agree with Peter Vesey. Like, how do you not talk to Peter Vesey? Like, he was what Woj is now. He was then.
Yep. Pete was the original, in so many ways. No. I agree. It's very streamlined. It was very handpicked. But then everything about this has been very handpicked. And if you don't know, then I'm sure you hear people like me or you, Doug, talking about it in this fashion, and are like, why are you so upset? We don't have anything. This is showing me things I never heard of or knew. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? There's more. There's more. And again, I think the big part for me is that Jordan, when this first came out, said people are going to watch this and think that I'm a terrible person. And that gave me for someone who knows everything about him and still respects him and thinks he's the best player going and understands that we all have flaws. Like, I don't begrudge him any of the things that I know, not a single thing. I still admire the hell out of what he accomplished. But when you tell me that, I'm thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is not going to be something that you are 100% good with. And I just feel like Michael's 100% good with everything that's been in here so far. And that's not that's not an accident. If you look at this and think he's a terrible person, like it just gave me a false impression of where we were going.
No, when I heard him, when I saw that he was promoting it, I knew right then and there. Yeah. Regardless, whatever he says, and then he was apologizing for some with Scott Burrell. I was like, yeah, no, this thing is not. This is going to be a one-sided deal, which I'm okay with, but it is what it is.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we haven't heard one word about Dennis Hopson or JoJo English. Like, there's some guys that came through there, and again, I'm trying to think who told me.
Dennis Hopson, and for people who don't know, Dennis Hopson was a first-round draft pick. Dennis Hopson was part of that Scottie Pippen trade, and Jordan thought he was too soft to compete with at the highest level, and Jordan got him the hell out of town, right?
Right.
And there was some discussions about Scottie when that Scottie was too soft early on. Yep. But they made Scottie out to be the second best player in the NBA, which he never was. Right. So I think Dennis Hopson's a perfect guy who could say like, it wasn't necessarily how you remember it.
Right. And I mean even the Tony Kukoc thing, like if you really wanted to look at that, okay, so you resented the fact that he was Krause's guy and he was anointed and they were negotiating with him when they weren't taking care of Scottie. You can give me all of that. But the fact of the matter is Tony Kukoc was a teammate, and Tony Kukoc was a guy who could help you win. And you personally tried to take him down for your own personal pleasure or your own vendetta against Jerry Krause. If you really look at it in that vein, then it doesn't come off quite the same way. And so, and there are other guys, and I think it was Judd Bushler who said it to me in a piece that I wrote, where he said guys would go to their agents. Like Jordan didn't have to ask management to trade a guy. He would make life so miserable, they would go to their agents and they'd go, "Get me out of here." Yeah. So, you know what? I just look, and again, Jordan was successful in doing it. I'm never going to be great. Kobe could be a pain in the butt, but he was successful ultimately doing the way he did it. I'm not going to begrudge a guy that. But just be clear, this is how you got it done. There are plenty of guys in the league that I know and that I am friendly with, professionally friendly, as Scott Van Pelt says. But I know that they're great white sharks. I know who I'm being friendly with.
Right.
And so don't try to pretend that you're a guppy when, in fact of the matter, I know you're a great white shark.
Last thing, we going to have basketball this season?
Yes, we are.
When?
Yes, we are. As soon as the testing, which I think in LA now is available to anybody who wants it, correct? Mm-hmm. Am I correct on reading that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. As soon as they get to the point where they can say, look, if you want to get tested, you can get tested, then they will do it. Vegas so badly wants to see this happen. I believe that ESPN, Disney wants to see it happen. They will bend over backwards as far as providing the facilities and the outside personnel to make it happen. But I would expect that no later than mid-June we'll be playing basketball games.
Mm-hmm. I tend to agree with you. I think it might be sooner rather than later. Just, as things kind of open up at a rapid pace, we'll have to see. The one issue is, the edicts come down from New York, and New York seems to be in a different place than the rest of the country. And even New York is progressing towards opening things up. So we shall see. Ric Bucher, you'll see him on all our Fox Sports 1 shows. Of course, read his work in Bleacher Report. Buch, great stuff as always. Thanks for joining us.